2:14 a.m., South China Sea. The night sky is thick and eerily quiet, suddenly torn by invisible streaks of fire. At the command center of an artificial island, radar screens erupt into violent interference. Go dark one by one. The entire early warning network falls silent, leaving only the ear-splitting wail of internal alarms. Too late. Shadows no system can tag. Skim the night at near subsonic speed. They are F-35Cs, stealth launched from a U.S. aircraft carrier, operating hundreds of nautical miles away. A chorus of ripping whistles as cruise missiles and precision glide bombs slip into the night, separating from the jets. China's HQ, 9 air defenses, the so-called fire lines guarding the sky, try to light off, vainly. They are firing at phantoms, electronic ghosts generated by EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft. Then come the rolling blasts, concrete runway, fuel ponds, hangars, radar masts, and missile launchers, all drown in a colossal firestorm, a surgical strike precise to the inch. Flash reports reach Beijing and the Pentagon. Almost simultaneously, Washington confirms a limited retaliatory action against ongoing aggression. China's entire South Sea fleet is raised to the highest combat alert, fully war-ready. The South China Sea chessboard flips over. Has war truly begun? The 2:14 a.m. strike is no spur-of-the-moment move. It is the result of months of mounting tension, driven to a boil. The real fuse, according to later released hypothetical papers, was lit 72 hours earlier. Beijing, in a direct challenge to Washington and its allies, unilaterally declared a new air defense identification zone, an ADIZ, covering nearly 80% of the South China Sea. To enforce the claim, China's Coast Guard and maritime militia, heavily armed, moved aggressively. Hostile, a Philippine resupply ship on a humanitarian mission at 2nd Thomas Shoal, was encircled and attacked with high-pressure water cannons, then raked by heavy machine gun fire. 3 Philippine sailors were killed, 5 others wounded. This act, the first to cause deadly casualties, crossed the red line Washington had drawn. Manila immediately invoked Article 5 of the U.S. Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. The Philippines declared that an armed attack on its forces is an attack on the United States. In the White House Situation Room, a decision came within an hour. A freedom of navigation operation was ordered. At the center of the response was Carrier Strike Group 12, CSG-12, led by the supercarrier USS Gerald R. Ford. This $13 billion ship is not just a floating fortress. It is a mobile city, carrying the wrath of the United States, with more than 75 combat aircraft aboard, escorted by a steel ring of Aegis cruisers. The Ticonderoga class, including USS Normandy, packing hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles, and at least 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, among them USS Thomas Hudner, famed for its N/Spy 6 radar, able to track thousands of targets at once, from ballistic missiles to drones. A force powerful enough to overmatch the Navy of a mid-sized nation. The opening blow did not begin with F-35s, but with EA-18G Growlers, the troublemakers of the sky. Electronic warfare specialists, launched 45 minutes earlier than the main strike package. They approached the island in radio silence. Their mission, blind the enemy completely. This is not old school barrage noise jamming. That's obsolete. The Growler pilots trigger a multi-layered electronic attack using ELQ-99 jamming pods and next-generation cyber intrusion tools. Layer 1, jam the data links between HQ-9 missile launchers and the central radar command node. Chinese batteries suddenly can't talk to each other. Layer 2, DRFM techniques. Digital radio frequency memory. They capture the radar returns and replay hundreds of false targets. Enemy scopes flood instantly, with phantoms surging from every bearing. Layer 3, the kill shot. Inject malware into the air defense network. High-energy data streams are driven into the antennas, exploiting security gaps to cripple the system's ability to tell real from fake. For the 12 most critical minutes, the entire air defense grid, worth billions of dollars, is reduced to dead metal. They fire furiously into empty air. Only when China's electronic wall collapses do the stealth flashes of the F-35C appear. No need to fly nap of the Earth or they cruise at a medium altitude, 30,000 feet, confident in radar-absorbent coatings and their special low observable design. To the few early warning radars, still flickering on life support, they are nothing more than harmless birds. The Pentagon's choice of the Navy's F-35C instead of the Marine Corps' F-35B is a strategic calculation. The F-35C has a larger wingspan, longer range, and, most crucially, carries more weapons, especially heavy bunker-busting bombs needed to shatter reinforced concrete. They are the ideal surgical assassins for this mission. F-35C pilots paint targets with laser and satellite coordinate cues. The Pentagon's objectives are clear. Not people, but strategic infrastructure. They intend to permanently neutralize the island, turning it from an unsinkable aircraft carrier into a useless slab in the ocean. First to fall, 2,000 pounds JDAM glide bombs, about 907 kilograms, raining down, designed to punch through the runway, engineered to survive typhoons and bomber ops, now snapped into three. Cracked like a wafer, JSSM cruise missiles. With intelligent flight profiles and long reach, home on high-value targets, the hangars, housing J-16s and reconnaissance aircraft on standby, and the radar command center. Secondary explosions roar. As missile stores and fuel depots are hit, the entire island quakes. Flames tower hundreds of feet high, visible from 50 nautical miles away. Panic washes over China's Southern Theater Command. Red alerts blare, but no one knows what is hitting them, or from where. Their radars see only noise, or hundreds of ghosts, while the real island burns. J-16 and J-11B squadrons at Hainan bases get scramble orders. Too late. The entire American strike, from first weapon impact to the last F-35C exiting the area, lasts barely 12 minutes. When China's J-16s arrive, they find only an island drowning in fire and an empty sky. The American Phantoms have vanished, folded back into the night. This is not an it is a message of strategic deterrence, calculated down to the last detail. Washington wants to prove two core points. First, the artificial islands Beijing spent billions of dollars building are not impregnable. They are extremely vulnerable to a precise, high-tech strike. In just 12 minutes, a single F-35C squadron turned China's fortress to ash. Second, U.S. stealth is real, and it outclasses the S-300, S-400 knockoffs, or China's own HQ-9 that Beijing touts. While China struggles with radar, the U.S. dominates EW and cyber. The strike is a thunderous slap to China's military tech pride. Political shockwaves erupt in Beijing at once. An emergency Politburo meeting is convened. At dawn, state media broadcast a statement condemning U.S. state terrorism, calling it naked aggression, and vowing to make the enemy pay. Moscow urges all sides to show restraint, but the Kremlin's tone is clearly anxious. It did not expect Washington to act so decisively and so successfully. In Tokyo and Canberra, official statements call for de-escalation, but behind closed doors, Australian and Japanese leaders quietly voice full support for Washington's red line. The opening blow is over, but this brutal geopolitical chess match has only truly begun. Humiliated on its own doorstep, China will not sit still. If Washington thinks Beijing will swallow this humiliation, it is mistaken. The strike on the artificial island is not only a military loss, it is a searing political slap aimed squarely at national pride and the leadership's prestige. This century of national humiliation narrative surges back to the fore. Beijing cannot fail to respond, or it risks losing legitimacy at home. The question is no longer whether it will retaliate, but when and how. Inside the Central Military Commission, options are laid on the table. The air is thick with tension. Option 1, symmetric response. Use a submarine to ambush a U.S. destroyer, or employ the Air Force to hit a P-8 patrol jet, a direct tit-for-tat. But the risks are uncontrollable. Striking a U.S. asset means immediate total war. Can the South Sea Fleet face down a U.S. carrier strike group head-on? The Gerald R. Ford Group? The answer is no, and everyone knows it. Option 2. Regional asymmetry. Declare an immediate blockade of the Taiwan Strait, cutting the island off from the world. A cruel pressure move on another U.S. ally, forcing Washington to split focus, but it is too complex. Requires massive preparation, and risks pushing Taiwan toward a declaration of independence, dragging Japan and South Korea in. Option 3. Strategic deterrence. This is the chosen path. China must demonstrate it has weapons to answer back, that its carrier killers are not a myth. It needs to reclaim lost deterrence. They will not target a U.S. carrier. That would be suicide, but they will show they can sink one if they wish. At 11 a.m. Beijing time, orders reach the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, PLARF, huge mobile launchers, hidden in forests and underground bunkers, across Guangdong and Hainan, begin moving to firing positions. At 1400 hours sharp, for Fire Dragons awaken, 4 DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles, nicknamed carrier killers, are brought to readiness. The giant mobile launchers angle up from their forest hides, and the underground doors in Guangdong and Hainan open. They roll into their firing lanes. At 14 hours, for Dragons breathe flame, 4 DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles, China's vaunted carrier killers, ignite, are launched simultaneously. Missiles that horrify every modern navy. They arc beyond the atmosphere at hypersonic speed, then re-enter with maneuverable warheads, MARV vehicles that can adjust their path at Mach 10, making interception nearly impossible. Their target, a carefully calculated empty patch of sea, a full 100 nautical miles ahead of the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier group. A supreme warning shot, a gunpowder-laced message. We see you. We can reach you. Back off. In the Combat Information Center, CIC, of the destroyer USS Thomas Hudner, the air goes rigid. Vamp, vamp, vamp. The shout echoes over the 1MC. Code words indicating anti-ship ballistic missiles inbound. The /Spy 6 radar, part of the Aegis system, picked them up seconds after they left the launchers. Thousands of radar T/R modules instantly compute trajectories, velocities, and predicted impact points. Aegis system establish fire channels. Authorize auto-engage. Gates, fire. Aegis system establish fire channels, authorized. From the Mk-41 vertical launchers, SM-3 interceptors, Standard Missile 3, Spear into the sky. They are built to kill in mid-course, outside the atmosphere. Almost immediately, SM-6 missiles, multi-role, able to intercept in the terminal phase, within the atmosphere. Launch as well. This is a duel of algorithms and speed. The South China Sea sky becomes a high-tech fireworks display. 2 SM-3s close successfully, destroying 2 DF-21D warheads by kinetic impact. Hit to kill at the edge of space. A silent, searing bloom. But the 2 remaining DF-21Ds, using violent evasive maneuvers, slip past the first defensive layer. They plunge back into atmosphere. SM-6 streak to meet them. 1 SM-6 finds its mark, detonating the Chinese warhead. The final DF-21D, with an impossible S-curve, dodges the SM-6 and knifes toward the sea. 4 colossal water plumes erupt, a full 100 nautical miles from USS Gerald R. Ford. No ship is damaged, but the message is delivered. Both sides have reason to shiver. The United States has shown Aegis can intercept carrier killers. China has shown the U.S. shield is not perfect. Let just one through, and a $13 billion carrier sinks to the bottom. The world holds its breath. News of the ballistic launch shakes global markets. Oil prices spike 40% in just 1 hour, and trading halts on both the Dow Jones and Shanghai exchanges. Due to extreme drops, the UN Security Council convenes an emergency meeting. NATO triggers Article 4 for urgent consultations on the security threat as tensions crest. Another pivotal encounter unfolds. In the air, a showdown that will reset the air power balance. A USP-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft, tasked with collecting intelligence on damage to the struck island, flies in safety mode, but with 2 F-35C escorts. This is a deliberate flight to gauge China's response. The response arrives. 4 Chinese J-20 Mighty Dragon stealth fighters scramble from an inland base. For the first time, two fifth-generation fighter types face each other directly, not in an exercise, but for real. The hunt begins. This isn't an old-school dogfight with cannons and tight turns. It's a battle of sensors, data, and stealth. The F-35C pilots, thanks to the Distributed Aperture System, DAS, see through their own aircraft, and via the data link, MADL, spot the J-20s from far away, long before the J-20s see them. The Americans keep their radars cold, relying on passive data and absolute radio silence. The J-20 pilots, built as high-speed hit-and-run killers, dash into strike and disengage, but quickly realize their opponents are no easy prey. As they close the gap, the J-20's radar warning receiver, RWR, suddenly blares to life. They've been painted not by active radar, but by the F-35's electro-optical targeting system, EOTS. A targeting mode to which the J-20 is nearly blind. A young F-35C pilot, in a taut heartbeat, hardlocks a J-20. The cockpit tick, shrill and steady, says an ADM-120D is ready to fire. Inside the J-20's cockpit, the Chinese pilot watches warning lights flash a furious red. One wrong press of a button, and total war officially begins. From 40,000 feet, the rules of engagement, ROE, are still obeyed. The American pilot keeps his finger on safe. The J-20 pilots see their hand is exposed, and their tactics compromised. They brake hard, light the afterburners, and withdraw. Not a single round is fired, but a decisive contest is over. The F-35 proves its dominance in situational awareness. It is an airborne command node. The J-20 proves fast and powerful, but still trails in sensors and data links. Both sides step back from the red line. Both have sampled the other's capabilities. The DF-21D is not invincible, but it is frightening. The F-35C rules the sky, but the J-20 is no pushover. A deadlocked, lethal standoff takes shape. Washington and Beijing both see that further escalation means both will lose. Time to unsheath a different weapon. The silence after that encounter is more chilling than engine roars. The South China Sea, which just witnessed a clash of top-tier aerospace tech, suddenly feels empty. In Washington and Beijing, strategists reach one conclusion, a single brutal truth. They stand at the edge of a war of annihilation that neither side can win outright. The military stalemate is China's DF-21D missiles, fearsome as they are, have been shown to be interceptable by America's Aegis system. And even if one leaks through, the price of sinking a U.S. carrier would be nuclear retaliation or a total war, for which China isn't ready. Conversely, America's F-35C has proved king of the sky, mastering situational awareness, but it cannot overfly mainland China to hit missile launchers or command nerve centers without risking World War III. It is a military draw, pure and simple. Both have guns to each other's temple, and both know pulling the trigger is suicide. But Washington understands, modern war isn't only steel and gunpowder. While the warships keep a deterrent distance at sea, an emergency meeting convenes, not at the Pentagon, but at the U.S. Treasury and at U.S. Cyber Command headquarters. A new campaign is launched, quietly, smokeless, yet more devastating than the F-35's. Operation Codename Stranglehold. Operation Stranglehold, America's game-changing weapon. The weapon that once defeated the Soviet Union without firing a single bullet. Its true nuclear power was the economy, technology, and absolute control over the global financial system. General, the first decisive strike targets the throat of China's economy, the Strait of Malacca. This is the strategic choke point, where over 80% of oil and natural gas imported by China must pass through. The U.S. 7th Fleet, supported by allies like Australia and Singapore, did not declare a blockade, because that term means war. Instead, they politely announced a maritime control zone, officially to prevent escalation and regulate arms movement. The result, every supertanker, regardless of nationality, passing through Malacca, was forced to stop and anchor. For days of prolonged safety inspections, a massive line of ships stretched for over 6 miles, Within just 48 hours, refineries in Shanghai and Guangzhou reported their crude oil reserves nearly depleted. Power plants began running at minimal capacity. China's economy began to feel the chill of its energy lifeline being cut off. That was the first chokehold strike. The second strike took place in the absolute silence of cyberspace. This time, the targets were container ports. China's economy lives on exports, and the ports of Shanghai, Ningbo, and Shenzhen are the lungs pumping goods worldwide. A new variant of the Stuxnet virus, a refined logic virus, developed by the U.S. Cyber Command, had been planted in their logistics systems months earlier, and now it was activated. The systems didn't collapse entirely. They malfunctioned by design. Giant automated cranes began misplacing containers. Shipping data was erased. Schedules were scrambled. Within 24 hours, the world's 3 largest ports fell into chaos. Millions of containers filled with electronics, machinery, and clothing for the holiday season in the US and Europe were stuck, unable to be exported. The global supply chain, already fragile after the pandemic, was instantly disrupted. China's economy, the factory of the world, suddenly came to a halt. Thousands of inland factories couldn't and had to shut down. Then Washington delivered the decisive blow, the most lethal strike, a financial knockout. In Brussels, an emergency joint press conference was held. The U.S. President, together with the President of the European Commission and the British Prime Minister, appeared before the cameras. They issued a brief but firm joint statement. Due to military aggression and threats to global security in the South China Sea, 5 major state-owned Chinese banks, including ICBC, Bank of China, and the Agricultural Bank, would be immediately disconnected from SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications. It may sound dull, but it is the oxygen of the pipeline through which world currency flows. Without SWIFT, Chinese banks cannot receive US dollars or euros from export orders. They cannot pay for Saudi oil or iron ore from Australia and Brazil. Every international transaction of the world's second-largest economy was frozen. China's economy, heavily dependent on exports and imported energy, was immediately paralyzed. In Shanghai and Shenzhen, stock market value evaporated. Trillions of USD in market cap within hours. Before emergency trading halts, millions of small and medium-sized enterprises could not receive international payments and declared bankruptcy. The unemployment rate soared. Social unrest began to simmer. In industrial hubs, in Beijing, the leadership of China realized a bitter truth. They had been strangled without another bomb or any F-35s. They can build the J-20 fighter, but they cannot create a replacement for SWIFT. They can launch DF-21D missiles, but they cannot shield their seaports from a level 5 cyber attack. They built a powerful military, but placed it on a globalized economic foundation, controlled by their adversaries. Operations. The war had ended. Not on the open sea, but on financial tickers and lines of code. On computers, a secret signal was sent via the Swiss embassy. Beijing accepted negotiations. Without preconditions, decisively, they agreed to withdraw offensive weapon systems from the artificial islands and to suspend enforcement of the ADIZ. In return, Washington agreed to conditionally restore access to SWIFT and to withdraw the carrier strike group back to its base at Guam. The board had been reset entirely. A new Geneva-style accord on South China Sea maritime security was quickly established under the cool gaze of the international community. The USS Carrier Strike Group, Gerald R. Ford, withdrew to Guam as a gesture of goodwill. In return, Beijing quietly pulled offensive weapon systems from the islands still remaining and announced a temporary suspension of enforcing the Air Defense Identification Zone. A new cold peace officially began over the waters of the planet's hottest maritime flashpoint. But this simulated scenario laid bare an immensely costly strategic lesson. The artificial islands, symbols of military power and expansionist ambition of China, were knocked out by F-35C squadrons in just 12 minutes. That proved the gap in military technology, especially in stealth and electronic warfare, remains an abyss Beijing cannot bridge. The F-35C proved it's not just a fighter jet, it's a key that unlocks the defenses of the adversary. However, the F-35C strike was not what ended the conflict. It was only the opening shot. The weapon that truly decided the game, the weapon that broke Beijing's will, was not the Tomahawk missile but the SWIFT system, not JDM bombs, but cyber attacks that paralyzed the supply chain, not the Seventh Fleet, but control of the Strait of Malacca. Washington proved that modern war does not necessarily have to be a mutual war of steel and annihilation. It is a war of information, of finance, and of supply chains. The U.S. delivered a precise, surgical deterrent strike. It crippled the adversary without triggering a full-scale bloodshed. China, even with the J-20 or came to a bitter realization. They had built a giant military body, but set it atop an economy that breathes through the lungs of finance and technology controlled by its very adversaries. The Great Power Showdown showed the fragility of peace and the dangers of military escalation, highlighting the vital importance of multilateral diplomacy, of core technological autonomy and resilience, smart asymmetric deterrent strategies when giants collide. Wisdom, strategic vision, and a cool head are the ultimate weapons to protect national interests. The flames on the artificial islands have died down, but the fire of ambition, of geopolitical rivalry, and of the core conflicts in the South China Sea still smolder beneath the surface, waiting for the next spark.